At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, as well as Rapid Deploy, and man, there is so much stuff that has been going on. I'm crazy excited for everything. Had just last week was the 2021 Navigator Conference. Had an amazing time. Thank you once again to the IAAD and Navigator for hosting the podcast. And there's some more stuff that's going to be coming up with them. I can feel it. So it's going to be really good. We're already going to be heading into the last part of July, which is also going to be the 2021 NENA Conference in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm excited for that as well. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be at booth 1045, and a huge shout out to Nina. Thank you so much for hosting the podcast once again. We're going to be in the vendor hall, like I just mentioned, booth 1045, and I'm going to have some special guests with me. So it's going to be excellent. I cannot wait to head out there starting this weekend. Within the Trenches podcast is also a sponsor of their 5K. And I believe it's called Run for 911. And we've got a team that's going to be going. The team might be called Hot Vegas Baloney. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But it is going to be awesome. And again, I already mentioned their names, but again, a shout out to InDigital and Rapid Deploy for being sponsors, because they're sponsors for us there at the conference as well. We're going to be doing some recordings with them and see some of the new stuff that they have coming out, and just everyone who's going to be there. It's going to be superb. So thank you all so very much. And a big shout out to patrons, as always, for everything. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you. And of course, all of those right now who are watching, listening, sharing, and supporting. So thank you so very much. There's so much to talk about. And my guest today, I'm excited to have him on. We've actually we've been talking a little bit, just a little bit, about having him come on and share his 911 story. And I'm glad that we're finally at this point where we're finally going to get to do this and be here together and just chat and learn some more. So my guest today is Gary, and he is the County 911 Coordinator and Training Officer out at Warren County Communications Center out of New Jersey. Yeah.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
What is going on, man? It is good to have you here finally. So good.
Oh, dude, it is monumental to be here finally. This has been as I'm sure you probably already said, long time coming, but I've been finally able to clear up my plate and a few other things to finally make this happen.
Well, and again, I'm excited. I'm honored to have you on. You know, I've had you during an Imagine Listening session. You've been a part of almost every live broadcast that I've done, whether it be, you know, the Dispatchers Roundtable, Open Mic Live, or the Dare to Be Great conferences, as well as Be the Difference and all the others. So just thank you so much for not only the job that you do, but for the support, man. It's been awesome. Thank you.
Hey, trust me, it's been my pleasure. Just, you know, supporting what you do, because what you do is huge in the industry. So to see somebody, you know, take that role on and take it as far as you have, it's amazing.
I appreciate it, man. I really do. And you know, like I was saying here in the intro, you know, I just got back from the Navigator conference, and I mean, you were at the National APCO conference in Baltimore, and just for those who are watching and listening right now, what was that like for you? You know, having an in-person conference, since, you know, we've now, you know, we're still, you know, the pandemic stuff is still going on. It's not as much as it was for 2020, of course, but before that, you know, having gone through this time where we were distancing and you know, still doing everything safely, and then thinking about what it was like before, but now as more in-person stuff is coming in, what was that national conference like for you?
It was pretty amazing. I mean, I was used to attending the state conferences here in New Jersey, but to be able to actually attend a national conference, you know, just the size of the classes, the opportunity to, you know, network is, you know, expanded so much more. It was, you know, to be at the National APCO, I'm used to seeing a vendor hall that's maybe filled with, you know, maybe 25, 30 vendors, but now to go into a vendor hall and see 300 vendors,
Yeah,
it was overwhelming. And then to be able to sit in on, you know, your Imagine Listening session, you know, that was a room that was probably, if I remember correctly, it was a double room. So there probably had to be 125 people in there. And I think you ended up doing 2 additional encore sessions because they kept filling up every time. But it was just, I wasn't able to attend the entire conference. I was only down there for one day for classes and one day for the vendor hall. And I was actually only there because my beautiful wife allowed us to go down there for our anniversary. It was our wedding anniversary that fell during National APCO. And I was like, hey, what would you say about going down to Baltimore for anniversary? And she said, oh, that'd be great. And I said, by the way, while we're there, would you mind if I... and she knew how much it meant to me, so she graciously agreed. But yeah, the conference itself was amazing.
Oh,
and,
man.
you know, to have that taken away from us for the last year and a half, you know, it stunk, no question about it, but it created a whole new way of learning in reality. COVID made us think outside the box with this virtual training, and, you know, your Dare to Be Great 1, 2, and 3 was just amazing. You know, I think I said it on one of your podcasts or even a few others, or not podcasts, but in the after shows, that I had more training in 2020 than I did in 24 years, just from all the virtual training. It was amazing.
It is, right? Because, you know, training wise, because I remember as well, you know, being in dispatch, and I did go to some trainings, but it was nothing compared to what was being offered last year. Like, yeah. I mean, I was learning a bunch of stuff, but I was also jealous. I'm going to be honest. I was jealous, and I say jealous because all of you were getting to take everything you were learning, and especially with this new technology and everything, and putting it to use. And I'm like, oh man, I want to try too. Like, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
Exactly.
Oh man. No, but it has been really good. And then, this last week, this Navigator conference, I saw people that I hadn't seen in forever, of course, over video, but not in person. And then, some of them to be able to, shake hands or hugs or fist bump or whatever, and just have that embrace for a while and just be like, we're back. Like, this is awesome. And then, like I had been telling people, it was like the first day of school, man. It was like being gone for the summertime and kind of talking to people or whatever. And then you come back, you're like, bring it in for the real thing.
It's okay. I'm a hugger again, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It was hilarious, but it was such a good time. And to be able to do, imagine listening as well, the same way as in Baltimore, and and have people in there and share these stories. And there was, in the beginning, it started out where, I did the intro and I was like, okay, who wants to share a story? And then it took a couple seconds, but then as soon as one person raised their hand, then it just kept going. People just wanted to share and share and share. And then of course, by the time you get to open mic, everyone's ready to laugh. So all of those stories, coming out, it was superb to be able to be in there with everyone again. And then, it'll be like that next week as well for the NENA conference, and then APCO, and then all the other ones that are, now going back in person. So it's going to be good. When do I see you again?
Well, I'm actually kind of bummed because when my wife found out that Navigator was in Vegas, she said to me, well, why didn't we go? I went, what? You just told me don't ever take you to a conference for our anniversary again. Granted, it wasn't our anniversary, but
right.
We could have. So I was like, wait a minute. I thought that was a no. And so then I started pitching the idea about going to NENA because Columbus isn't that far away. I'm used to driving from here in New Jersey to my home state, my old home state, Michigan. That's only an 8-hour drive. So I was like, hey, I could do that. That's not a problem. And she was like, well, no, we're not making that our trip.
No road trip.
No road trip. And I'm like, all right. So now instead of going to Columbus, I'm actually going to Seattle to see my brother. So
that'll be awesome.
I can't. Yeah, I'm happy to see my brother. I'm bummed to miss out on NENA, but I haven't seen my brother. I've seen my brother, but I haven't seen where he's lived in 30 years. Mm-hmm. So to be able to go out west, and he lives in just outside of Seattle, so to be able to hike out there,
that's going to
be huge. That's going to be
man.
Huge.
Mount Rainier is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is superb out there. If those who are watching and listening, if you haven't had a chance, get out there because it is superb. It is awesome.
Absolutely.
So, finally having you on here and everything, I want to learn more about you, and especially for the audience as well, to learn more about you as well. How did you get into dispatching to begin with, and how many years have you been doing this now?
Whew. Oh boy, you want to learn about me? Oh boy, this is scary. If anybody has any little ones in the room, you might want to put some headphones on them so they don't hear anything.
You've been warned.
Yes, you've been warned. And if I do start to rattle off too much, just shut me up because I have the gift of gab. I used to be in sales. So
perfect.
And that's actually what I was doing before I started 911. And actually, I'll go back a little bit further than that. I started in public safety with volunteer EMS. Mm-hmm. My now wife was my girlfriend back then. She grew up next to the emergency squad building. And when I was dating her, she was basically, everything she was doing was always centered around the local EMS. So if I wanted to see her, I had to be involved in EMS. So I joined. The volunteer, became an EMT. Then I started hearing the scanner, and it kind of, piqued my interest a little bit. Our center was only 2.5, 3 years old at the time. We had a whole bunch of small centers, and we became regionalized. And because of their opening, they offered tours to the local police, fire, and EMS. So I went in there. At the time, I mentioned before I was involved in sales. You name it, I sold it in my life. But at that time, I was selling cars. And we had the tour of the center. We learned about how the 911 calls came in. And then finally we went in and saw the actual comm center itself. And at the time, there was only about 4 people working. And this big accident came up on the interstate, and to watch these 4 people handle this call, contacting, dispatching police, fire, EMS, getting a helicopter on standby. There was two tractor trailers and a couple cars involved, so they had to reach out to the neighboring state, Pennsylvania, for heavy rescue services, call those people in. They did all this like in 60 seconds. And I was just like, wow, this is cool. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, there isn't anything I can sell that can give me that adrenaline rush that I just felt witnessing what I witnessed. And so on the way out, I said to the director, I was like, hey, by any chance are you guys hiring? And he's like, yeah, matter of fact, we are. And I was like, oh, all right, sign me up. Within, I think it was 6 weeks, I was part of a class of 6, and kind of never looked back from there. Once I got that bite, I was hooked,
What?
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, because, we would have, kind of the same, but different. You're talking about how you guys went in there and stuff. I was just going to reference like Citizens Academy, like they would come in to dispatch. They would do their thing with the county, with the deputies and all. And then they would come into dispatch, and, they would come in just with their eyes, just like, really, like this is where it goes down and everything. But I have never heard of someone going in to do like a tour of dispatch and then just be like, dude, like this is pretty cool. Like I want to apply like you're telling me. So that is freaking awesome. Like you got bit by the bug right then and there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It didn't take much. That's for sure.
So when you say, you were put into a class, like, so what all did you have to go through to get into this? You're talking like a training, right? It was
yes.
a class of however many for training and such, but what happened before that? What was the process?
So at that time, it was literally, the application portion wasn't that much of a screening. We joke around about that now, how people have to pass psychiatric exams and things like that. And I'm like, whew. I didn't have to worry about that part of it, thank God. But yeah, basically at the time, what was, you fill out an application, you did a background check.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even have a typing test back then. It was just, if you were of good character, had good references, passed your background check, bring them on in and give it a shot. So there wasn't a whole lot involved in the beginning, like there is now.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about that afterward, but there's a lot more involved now, just simply because, who we want to try and get is the cream of the crop all the time. So it's interesting though.
Yeah. And so it was pretty much the same way for me. When I first started out, I went in, this is Central Florida, at a small, police department. I go in and, I did my interview, and then it was just a background check. I didn't hear from anyone for like 2 months, man. And so I thought I messed up, but then, the chief comes in and asked me if I wanted the job still. And I said, yes, but that was it. Like there was no testing. There wasn't anything else. Again, this was 2001. And, it was just really, you're going to go in and you're going to meet your trainer. They're going to train you on some things. I did go to a 40-hour beginners, dispatcher call taker course. Mm-hmm. But, from that, I remember a lot of different calls that we listened to, different techniques that you can do, and, kind of how callers think about, descriptions and all types of things. So, there was some good stuff in there, but there's nothing like it is now. That's for sure.
Yeah, and things have changed, but at that point, when we first went in, it was similar to what you said down in Florida. We didn't have the structured program right away. Mm-hmm. The first, I want to say it was probably almost 3 months. I sat down with my trainer, and it was, okay, do as I do. And it was just, whoever was the oldest and whoever had the most patience to sit with a trainee got picked. And it was okay. He kind of shows you the phones. You listen to him as he answers, asks questions, provides information to the officers, talks on the radio, puts the information into the CAD, just kind of like, okay, now it's your turn. And I was kind of like, wait, what? What do you want me to do? He's like, just, he says, I'll tell you what, I'll ask the questions. You put the answers into the CAD. I went, okay, no problem. And I was actually a much faster typer than he was. So it was kind of like he had to speed up his questions a little bit because he was like, oh, you're a little faster than I am. Okay, hold on. You're going a little too fast with the CAD. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry.
And so for those who are watching and listening, who are in the general public that don't know what a CAD is, what is CAD?
Computer aided dispatch. Basically, It's our way of taking all the information that we have, putting it into our computer system that is going to, a lot's happened since 1997. Now I can click on links of names, phone numbers, and it can tell me prior histories of calls and things of that nature. We didn't have that back then. So, but basically it was just the fancy DOS version of, computers with information.
Oh man, you said the DOS.
Oops, I just dated myself.
The DOS version. Oh, I say that because I had the same CAD that we had when I moved back home to Southwest Michigan. The CAD system we had was a DOS type thing where it was just like command line. Everything was black and green, and you had to memorize every single code, every single township code, city code, ORI, all of it. You had to have memorized because if you didn't get that information in there, that CAD complaint would not go in, and then the officers wouldn't get it, and they would key up on the radio, Central, where's that CAD call? Central, where's the CAD call? And you're like, I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah, it's very similar to the old the CGIS days. That single line entry. You had to put everything in.
Right.
Throw in a couple of Hail Marys, cross your fingers, pray to God, hit enter, and
spin around, do a downward dog. Yes. And especially if you had one of those dot matrix printers, like I don't know how yours was, but like for us, when we would run NCIC stuff, that printer, so we could only do one entry at a time because it wouldn't allow us to put in another one until the one was done printing out. And if somebody runs a Smith on a night, there's the drunk driving grant going on, there's like 20 other officers on at the same time. Of course, this is, back in Southwest Michigan at the Central Dispatch because it was way bigger. That sucked when especially when you're training. And they're like, oh, they're running a Smith, and then it just ring, and you're just waiting, and the officer keys up Central. You got that information? I've got 3 here with me. And we're like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you got to wait.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about CAD and everything, and you being the one who is typing everything in, what is it that you see? If you can, thinking back, what is it that you're looking at so that everyone who is listening and watching can kind of picture what it is that you're looking at as well? Because I remember, going into training, walking into that center and seeing all the monitors, seeing people working there and thinking, am I going to be able to do this? Like, there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny too, because I said the word DOS before, but our CAD manager at the time, if he watches this, he's going to smack me upside the head next season. But back in 97, we had one huge, large CRT screen, and our CAD was Windows based. It wasn't totally DOS. So we had 4 different screens within that one big CRT screen, and then we had these huge phones that were, had like a million lights on them. So at our CAD console, we had that one large screen, our huge phone, and then our anti-alley screen. So it wasn't a whole lot at that, for the individual, for that desk. So it wasn't too bad. Today, we're looking at 7 screens because of all the technology changes. Not, it's not like we've gone backwards. It's just the advancements because we got so much more data to be looking at.
Right.
But back then it was just that one large CRT screen. And back then also, we didn't have lights on in the comm room. Basically, the comm room was lit by the computer monitors. Oh, so it was interesting. And my very first trainer, my regular trainer, wasn't in that day. And the trainer that I was sitting with didn't know that was my first day. She thought I'd been there for a couple of days. So she was just answering phone lines and just expected me to just talk. And I was like, am I supposed to say something right now? She's like, well, yeah, I just picked up the phone. You're supposed to answer the call. I'm like, what?
Oh.
Yeah, there was a huge lack of communication there.
Oh man. So
Yeah.
you weren't even like observing with the umbilical cord and listening with the switch with you on mute. It was like, it's you. You're supposed to be
well,
talking.
I mean, I was on the umbilical cord, but I wasn't muted. And she, well, actually, I was muted at that time, but then she was like, no, unmute. And I was like, 911, where's your emergency? And she smacks me. And that's only because that's what I heard the other dispatchers saying when they were answering the calls. So I thought that's what I answered it.
Uh-huh.
Well, I didn't realize it, but the button that she had pressed was a non-emergency line.
Oh.
So my very first phone call was an overnight parker. Somebody who had to report their car was going to be on the street overnight. And I answered it, 911, where's your emergency? Which really confused the hell out of the caller. They're like, oh, I didn't call 911. I'm sorry. You got to send the cops here.
And then you got smacked.
Yeah, and then I got smacked.
I had a coworker back in the day who when I was first training, and I heard her say the same thing to another person, but she goes, Ricardo, do I need to get the ruler out? I'm like, are you for real? She goes, I will smack your hand if you are, what was it? It was, so I was writing stuff down on notes. And she goes, everything's got to stay in your head. I was like, it is in my head. I'm writing other things down. And she's like, you want me to get the ruler?
No, young man.
Exactly. And I looked over at someone else and I said, is she for real? And they're like, she's for real. I'm like, okay.
Don't screw around with her. You don't want that. You don't want to meet her out in the parking lot.
Oh man. Yeah, it was always fun. That training, it made me laugh. I never felt the wrath of the ruler, but it was like, when you were a kid and you're doing something and your parents just go, they look at you and like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah.
Sorry.
Only because your trainer did not know your middle name.
Yeah. Well, luckily I don't have a middle name. So I have a suffix. I have a Roman numeral 2. So it would just be Ricardo. I'm like, okay. I'll stop writing. I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh my God.
So you're doing all this training and everything, and you ended up, you take this call. How long did the training last? And then how many people were working at a time?
All right. So at that time, going back to 97, there was 4 people on the floor, 4 regular dispatchers, and then us trainees. And I think I was on nights, so there was 2 of us on nights training. And that first few months, it was literally just sit with your trainer, do as I do, follow along. And then we went through the actual 911, or actually back then it was basic telecommunicator training, and then EMD training. Both of those were 40-hour classes. Once you got those certificates, then it was, okay, back up on the floor with your trainer, and now you can actually answer the 911 calls. Your trainer is still plugged in with you, but they're actually working their own desk next to you. So you're kind of on your own, but they're supposed to be there to rescue you. Unless they're on their own 911 call, then you're kind of on your own.
Yeah. Oh.
So it was it was interesting.
Did you ever have one of those moments where the trainer's on a call and you're like, oh crap, like
I knew you were going to ask me that question. Yeah, and the reason why I remember my very first 911 call so vividly is because it was a crazy domestic. And the call came in, young man reporting that his mom was being beaten up by her boyfriend, and he wanted to go stab the guy. And he wanted me to give permission to do that. Oh, and I was like, and I stand up, my trainer's on the phone with somebody else. I stand up, mute myself, look at my supervisor, and I was like, hey, where the hell was this training? What do I say?
Right.
Can I tell him to stab him? What do I? And he's like, Well, think about it. Do you really want the guy to stab the other guy? Well, no. Well, then tell him no. Okay. He says, and then tell him to get out of the house. Why? Well, because if he's in the house with a knife, the cops are going to shoot him. So tell him, don't arm himself with a knife. Get out of the house. Wave down the cops. They're already on the way. Okay. While he's outside, get a description of the people that are involved. Because if we send him in, yeah, it's bad enough his mom's getting beat up. But now we don't want 2 victims.
Right.
So he kind of talked me through, okay, get him out of the house. But I was like, when I stood up, I was like, what the hell is this? We didn't receive this kind of, they told us other stuff. They didn't tell us what to say for this, And it's funny because I use that in my training today. There's not this magical book that's this thick that says, okay, if your caller calls in on a Tuesday between these hours and is reporting this incident,
Right.
and he's wearing a yellow shirt and the victim's wearing, that you say these things, that stuff doesn't exist. They teach you the basics to make sure that you get the location, the phone number, what's happening, who's safe, who isn't safe, and descriptions, and that's the stuff that we drill in every day. Just for your basic calls. And then, you got your other, EMD calls, but still that's basically what he said. Because I told him, I was like, afterwards, I was shaking. And he's like, why are you so nervous? I was like, well, I think I screwed up the call. I was like, no, you did fine. You did everything you were taught to do in the very beginning. You got the address. I heard the call. The guy was being difficult with you. You got the address right away. You confirmed the phone number. You got descriptions of what was going on and who it was. You did everything textbook. And I was like, well, it didn't feel like it because he wanted an answer if he can go stab the guy. And he's like, yeah, they're going to make some crazy questions like that or, crazy requests. And in the end, we don't ever want to tell anybody else to commit violence against somebody else.
Right.
Unless they're defending themselves. So it's like
it's a crazy thing, right? This job when stuff like that happens. Oh man, you made me go back to some of my own calls where I remember people saying they're trespassing. I have a weapon. I want your permission to shoot them. And I'm like, I can't give you permission to do that. You have the right to protect yourself, your property, and your family. And they would, because that was something that they told us, there's liability class, and so they told us in that class, you can say that, but you don't ever give permission to. Exactly. And I was like, of course, yeah, I don't want to be the one to say, yeah, let's do whatever you're gonna do. No, hell no. You don't ever want to, do anything that'll cause, like you were saying, more victims and stuff.
Exactly.
When stuff like that happens. And but it's a crazy thing when people call in. They call and they're trusting a voice, someone who's there to help them. But then when they ask questions like that, it's like, dude, for real? Yeah, that is crazy stuff.
And even having the EMS background that I had at the time, your instinct is you want somebody to help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're describing either a horrific scene or a very unsafe scene, I got to go in there and I got to save that guy. No, you don't want to do that. Well, I've got to save this person. Yeah, but, you don't want to run into a burning building. You don't want to run into a burning car. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that somebody was involved in a tragic accident. It's really unfortunate that a house is on fire and there might be somebody trapped inside.
Mm-hmm.
It's really bad that somebody may get injured or even die, but it would be even worse if there was 2, 3, or 4. And the only thing we could do is get resources there as fast as possible. Keep that caller as safe as possible. But it's hard having that EMS side, wanting them to say, oh yeah, I know how to do CPR. I got to go in and get that guy. Nah, if you're describing to me an unsafe situation, you can't go in and get that guy.
Right.
Wait for resources. They get there and they'll help from there. But it's tough because, having that knowledge that, yeah, I would want to run in there and help the guy too. And I can't tell him to do that.
Yeah. Did you ever find it hard when you were making that transition at all? Because you had that background and then you come into dispatch. And the reason I ask is because, and I know I've mentioned it before on the podcast many times, but I had a coworker who had come in from EMS and fire rescue and stuff, and I remember him saying a few different things over the phone, and then him telling us and kind of arguing a couple times, like, this is the way we do it out in the field. And I said, yeah, you're not in the field right now. Like, you're in dispatch. We have our own protocols that we need to go through. So you need to stick to those. And he struggled a little bit in the beginning, but he quickly caught on, and, and everything was fine. He was able to separate that. Did you ever find any times where, that was in your head a little bit, or was it more so just building upon your skills coming out from there back inside to be able to help you with the call a little better?
It was actually a combination of both. In the beginning, I did have that problem separating myself, and to this day, I tell a lot of our new applicants that have fire and EMS background, you need to learn how to leave it at the door. You can't bring those skills in here, because I'm not hiring you as an EMT. I'm hiring and training you to become an EMD, and you have to stop. You can't use your EMT. I've even had some people that were paramedics that worked for us, and I would hear them go off script on the phone to the level of providing care that would be an ALS type level care. And I'd be like, hey, wait, whoa, you can't do that. That's not part of the guide cards. I understand, what, but if you were to say something wrong, the liability is going to fall on you, not the agency, because you went out of script.
Right.
And we actually have, when we're in the process of trying to bring on new people now, as is pretty much everybody in the country, everybody's short-staffed. We tell them during our information session, hey, you don't have to have police, fire, EMS background. Some of our people do better without that background because they don't have to learn the disconnect.
Yeah.
Right now, I think 60% of our supervisors had no fire or EMS background at all. And they're supervisors now. They actually did, not saying they did better, but, they did that well that they were able to get to that supervisory level without any background, because they didn't have to have that, that disconnect. But it is difficult to have that separation from time to time, especially when you're doing an EMD call and you have certain questions that you would ask. Okay, well, I'm not going to ask those questions, but I'm going to follow the guide cards. If I run out of questions on the guide cards, okay. If I want supplemental information, okay, I can ask the questions. I just can't provide advice. That's outside the guide card. So, but it is different.
Yeah, and I agree as well that somebody coming in with sometimes no experience works a lot more, but there are also some who come in with experience with family members coming from different disciplines of public safety, and this isn't the same with everyone. I only noticed this with a couple of people in my time in dispatch, and what ended up happening was, they felt like because they had family in public safety and they were around it so much that they would be a great fit, and very confident, stuff you want to see and everything, and having some of that background as well. But then coming out of geography, codes, like all of that stuff, and then actually taking a call, and then them realize, no, like this is not what I thought. I thought you guys were just in here answering the phone and and just dispatching or whatever, that it wasn't going to be like this, and it's a big eye opener. And then they end up leaving, which, in a way it's good, because one of them went all the way through training, and it was one really big call that they ended up not coming back. They quit that day. They quit after that shift. But the other person, as soon as they started getting on training for phones, they're like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. But again, that's good in a way, because then all of the resources and time and everything that you're putting into training someone is at least cut in half, so you're not wasting the rest of it. You can bring another person in and continue it from there. But it's hard, man. It
is. I mean, we had one one officer come in. He didn't work within our county. He came from a large city. And he literally was like, hey, yep, I retired from this department. And I thought, you know what, supplement my income from retirement, I'll take a job at communications.
Mm-hmm.
He, within a couple of weeks, he was like, I had no idea what you guys did. I apologize if I interviewed you incorrectly, because I think I trash talked you a little bit. Like, I'm just going to come in and relax with my feet up and just answer some phone calls type thing. He was like, wow, I had no idea this is what it's like. And he was like, yeah, no, if I stayed here, I would be disrespecting the job. And he left.
See? And those are some of those good moments when people realize on their own that it's not for them. I mean, ultimately it helps everybody out. It sucks. It sucks really bad, because then you're like, damn. All right, well, lost another, like, crap.
Yeah, right.
But in the long run, it ends up being better, because what if that person or the other person that I was talking about, what if they stayed and they ended up taking kind of like the call you were talking about earlier, a pretty gnarly domestic or something, and someone got hurt, or they froze on the phone, or just something happened. Again, like I mentioned before, ultimately I think it ends up helping out that they end up going, on their own.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you end up taking that call, and you've got, all of your training and everything else. Now, you're the 911 coordinator, the county 911 coordinator, but also a training officer. So when we talk about training officer, how long were you dispatching before you decided to move up? Because a lot of times, there are, and from what I've found, interviewing a lot of people and talking and learning more about them and their histories and stuff, a lot of times when those have gone into becoming a training officer, there are things in their past that was kind of motivation, inspiration for them to move into a role like this, because, depending on the training or whatever it was, whether it was bad or even really good, it motivated them, inspired them to want to do the same thing to help them mold that next generation that's coming in as well. What made you decide that you wanted to move into training?
Well, first of all, have you been talking to my wife? It's funny you should say that about motivation to get involved in training, because that is, and actually that could be a whole nother episode, because it's actually going to be, there's actually be a class I'm developing. But kind of a Reader's Digest version of what got me there was the fact that I went from a barely structured training program for the first couple of years at the county facility I'm at now. And again, mostly it was because they were still in the learning phases of what they were going to, of how to run a regional center. The classroom portion for now one officer, I keep saying that, basic telecommunicator back then, and EMD was structured, but the other part of it wasn't structured. And at the time, one of our smaller PSAPs in the county, the only one in the county that wasn't part of the consolidation process, was hiring dispatchers. And I won't lie, it was for a substantial amount more money. So I was like, all right, hey, I'll give it a shot. Plus, I knew some of the officers that worked in that department. And I applied, I got accepted. Then all of a sudden, a full-time position came open there. So I was like, okay. I went and worked at the small PSAP and stayed at the county part-time. And when I was at that small PSAP, again, there was no structured training whatsoever. It was literally do as I do. Now it's your turn. To this day, as a reminder, I still have my spiral notebook of all the notes I took about how to do stuff. And because it was a lot more detailed, because we were involved with the public a lot more. We were, at the county level, we were just searching for warrants in NCIC. At the small agency, we were actually pulling warrants out of a filing bin, verifying it like that, plus NCIC. We were recalling warrants. We were dealing with people at the window. There was a lot more interpersonal communications with the public at that point. Even though I was working nights, they could still walk in at night and walk up to the window. But there was a lot of stuff that had to be, that I had to learn, learn how to watch prisoners, how to document, their activities, that sort of thing. And like I said, the Reader's Digest version, something happened that caused me to say, oh shit, and being the night shift dispatcher, to keep myself awake, I read all the books. I read the NCIC code manual over and over again. Yes, I'm the geek who did that.
What?
Yes.
That book's like this big.
Yeah. I'm actually famous for entering a stolen vehicle with a blank computer screen because I had the computer screen memorized. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I actually entered
well
a stolen
done.
Vehicle. Well done, but I was a dork. I just showed you how much of a dork I was. But anyways, because of what I did at night, reading all the books, I learned about how our anti-alley screens worked in different ways, and it was right when the wireless calls were becoming a lot more popular. How we could rebid calls, and I realized that I actually saved somebody's life simply because I knew a lot more than some of the other dispatchers because they hadn't taken the time. And I thought, wow, these people need to learn this. They really need to. And so I went into the chief and we developed an actual structured training program. I spent 8 years there at the time. And my motivation was the fact that, hey, I can't be the only person that knows how to do this. Everybody needs to be able to how to do this. Everybody needs to be able to save a life the same way I did. We eventually got consolidated into the county. So when I went back to the county full time, I basically learned that there was others like me that had that same passion for training. And what we did was we all put our heads together, and the county at that point was already starting to develop a little more structured program. But when I came on board, we kind of even went harder at it and said, you know what? Yeah, and not to knock them what they did at the time, but yeah, everything could always be improved. And so I shared with them what I had gone through, and that kind of opened up a lot of eyes. They were like, wow, we didn't even know you could do that with that equipment. I was like, I didn't either. But one night I was bored and I was reading the book and I figured out how you can do that. And because I did that, I saved a life. And they're like, wow, so let's look at what we have and let's see if we can change it and make it better. And that's what we did. And now we went from, maybe a 10-page training document to, a training manual that's probably about yay thick, that goes through day one all the way. It's a 5-month training program, and it is constantly being updated with the technology that's changing. But as long as we continue to train, we can give our callers, our residents, what they expect. Nobody's ever perfect, but we can try and we can reach for that as much as possible. That's my biggest thing. If we can at least try to be perfect for every single call, then we know we're doing the right thing. Because there's always going to be something that's going to prevent us from being perfect, whether it's misinformation from the caller, misinformation from the anti-alley. There's always something that likes to throw a wrench in the gears of the system, and they're going to happen. And if we can be prepared for those and accept those challenges, so okay, well, it looks like the road's not straight anymore. We got to make a turn, and work through those problems. Then in the end, it's never a mistake. It's actually just a change in the way we're going to do it. It's not actually a mistake or an error. We just do it differently.
Damn.
I got rattled. I rattled on there a little too long.
No. That was perfect. I was hanging on every word, man. Like that's the type of inspiration and passion that goes into this job that really gets shit done, and I love that. And so I have to ask, like, while you were doing all of this, while you were figuring all of this out, and people joining in and just putting in all of your time into this, how did that make you feel? Like that had to feel really good. Like, man, we're really doing this.
Yeah, it did. I mean, for a while there, when I was at that small PSAP, a lot of people referred to it as just padding my resume, but I was signing up, to go to classes on my own. I was paying for it on my own. I was traveling to South Jersey. A shout out to Dennis down in South Jersey, Gloucester County. He was an amazing instructor. I pretty much followed him with a lot of the trainings that he did. He's still active today in a lot of the trainings that he does. And, with that, we were like, wow, that's, we'll continue to push. There's more information out there. Every class that came through, if I could afford it, I was putting myself through it. And then bringing that back and then giving it out to the others. None of it was ever just for myself. It was, I would go to a class, I would come back. The first thing I would do is develop a lesson plan to teach it to the other dispatchers. Because I wanted them to have that same opportunity that I felt. To pull somebody from death, it's a huge feeling, and to be able to give others that opportunity feels great.
That's awesome, man. That is exactly what, whenever, you're at a conference or a training course or something, and someone says, I want you to, or not so much I want you to, but how are you going to take what you learned, and do something with it? How are you going to take it back to your center and do something with it there? And that is what you just said. That is exactly what I've always pictured, is, someone going back and actually sitting down and looking at what their center is doing or not doing, and how to fit in whatever it was that they learned from training, class, conference, or whichever, and really implement it to do something good there with everyone involved.
Exactly. And that's the key part of it, is that it can't just be one person. It needs to be a team, because I've learned and I've been told, that's not the right way. That's the way we've done it, but I can't think of another way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not just you. There's other people that work here too.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, even those people that we don't always get along with, you got to throw those ideas by them, get their, how do you feel about this? How would you have handled this differently? How can we improve upon this? The only bad idea is the one that's never brought up.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes those that, people might not always get along with, at least from my experience, they've never been asked certain things.
Exactly.
So they're already kind of, standoffish. Like they don't want to talk or anything. Like, well, so-and-so feels like that. Well, maybe it's because maybe if we brought them in and actually asked them some questions, because their opinion does matter, maybe they've always felt like maybe their opinion doesn't matter, or maybe, why should they say anything because no one has asked them anyway? It doesn't cost anything to just simply ask.
Exactly. And that's
try.
You need to fact check yourself once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, it was just maybe a month or so ago, I started pulling people into my office, and I said, look, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Don't worry about hurting any feelings. Don't worry about anybody getting upset. I said, but what is your true opinion of our training program right now? What do you think? What do you think about it? And again, I'm trying to get some insight. I want to get some opinions. If we need to change something, tell me. Because with staffing being as low as it is, our training committee hasn't been able to meet as often as we would like to. So it's like, or they've, they picked up and gone other places. So, with the staffing being the way it is, it's like, I'm actually asking people right out of training, hey, come on in, let's talk. What was your biggest takeaway from training? What did we do good? What did we do bad?
Mm-hmm.
What should we have done? What did you want us to, what were your expectations now that you're looking at it? Because everybody, when they first come in, they say, oh yeah, everything's fantastic. You know what? You're off training now. You're on the desk. Lay it to me straight.
Right.
What did you really expect? And where did we drop the ball?
Mm-hmm.
What could we have done better? Some of them say, oh no, everything was fantastic. Bullshit. There's
Yeah.
something. There's got to
Right.
be something that. Oh well, now that you mention it,
There,
yeah, we I could have learned to I could have used a ride along with the county a little bit more. Okay, yep, I get that. Because with COVID we couldn't do ride alongs. We actually at one point we incorporated where we would get the county bus with all the trainees and we would just drive around the county and just find spots where, the hot spots where all the action is. So they can at least get, somewhat of an understanding that way. I would have.
I think
Go
that's really good, man, because you definitely want to get them right when they've come out of that training, when they've gone through all of it and they're in to get that straight up feedback. Because while they're in it, of course they're going to go back and say, oh, everything's fine, because they want to make sure they make it through training because they
Right.
like what they're doing.
Exactly.
But when they get through and then you ask them, like for me, when I was training, I had 3 different trainers. Each one of them taught differently. And if I was, using, something from a different trainer, I would sometimes get marked down because I wasn't doing it the way that current trainer was doing it. And I remember having to go in and talk to the deputy director and say, look, this isn't working. Like, I'm getting marked down for all of this bullshit. I'm doing it right. I'm just not doing it the way they're doing it. And I said, I've even found my own way to do things, but I'm still getting marked down. I said, so I thought, what are we doing here? And I remember during that time, I almost quit. Because of that, and because nobody was talking to me. I didn't, I found out later that's just how they do it. It's when you get to the last stage, that's when everyone works as a team. So that was a little weird as well, because I figured we were going to be a team right from the beginning, right? But it wasn't like that. So it was stuff like that where we had to learn, and it did change. A lot of it has changed, and it's way better now. But man, when I was in there, it was like, how do I do this? Do you want me to do it the way you're doing it? Is it okay if I do it the way I know it, or the way someone else taught me? And then I was just, the job is stressful as it is, right?
Yes,
So-
exactly. And that's to us, that was the emphasis or the driving role of our training manual.
Mhm.
The fact that it's in writing how to do a specific task. Okay, that is how it is textbook. If you find a way to do it that is equal to our minimum standard, fine.
Mhm.
But you know how to do it by textbook. Here's your way. You get the exact same result. Okay, that's fine. And some of our trainers, for the longest time, it was always, you got to keep the trainee with the same trainer the entire time. We got to keep things standardized. Well, then we started seeing people were kind of slacking off a little bit. And so we would have to, or people would go on vacation, sick time or whatever, and we'd have to move the trainee around a little bit. And we started saying, hey, this person is teaching this person this way, and they're actually doing better. Okay, well, maybe having the same trainer the entire time isn't the best idea. Maybe we need to open their eyes up to somebody else, and somebody has a different way of learning, or a different way of teaching an idea.
Mhm.
Or even what's even better is if somebody is stuck on something, they can't get over that wall because they've only been taught how to do it this way. Well, somebody gives them another way to get over that wall, but they get over the wall.
Right.
Okay, it works. Another set of eyes, or even a third set of eyes, sometimes is what it's needed to get somebody to progress through that level. And it's funny, like I said, that's all part of the change. We got to stop thinking that it's just one way or the highway. We need to expand our horizons. We need to expand our thought process to say, okay, here's textbook. Here's a way of doing it. It's not violating policy, but it's giving us the same result. Good enough. And sometimes
Exactly.
it just took somebody to actually do that and say it's okay for it to actually go forward.
Love it. That's the only way that a lot of this does work, is by keeping our eyes and ears and our mind open, right? For all of that. during training, and just every situation that comes on, because technically, I mean, we're learning everything, or we're learning new things every day. It doesn't matter what it is, especially in this job. We're always learning something else. The incident types might be the same, but the situation is always different, and there's always another level or layer that gets added onto it, right? When you get to that point where you think, man, I have taken everything. Nope, the dispatch gods come out of nowhere and they're like, here you go. How about that one?
Yeah, quite literally. And that's, that was my my story I shared with your Imagine Listening. At that, when I took that call, the call that broke me, I thought I was a brick shit house, man. 15 years in EMS, I had taken everything. I had seen blood, I'd shoveled body parts off of a highway. I've felt the weight of a human head in my hand. I've listened to all those callers, the distraught callers from the lifeless infant, the parents crying for help, domestic violence. I was like, hey, I've taken everything. Nothing's going to break me. And then bam, 10-year-old boy breaks me. It's like, wow, you never know. You just never know what's going to impact you. And having the opportunity to share those stories, to release those stories makes all the difference in the world.
So I was going to ask you.
I don't even know why I went down that road just now.
Well, I was going to ask you. Do you have any calls that stick with you? And then I didn't even have to ask, because I'm guessing that's really the one that's there. That sticks with you. The fact that you were able to share it, though, it speaks volumes, because we talk about excuse me, all of the experience that we have, the calls that we've taken, and still a lot of times people they don't understand. We all understand each other, and I think in those out in the field and those in the general public are definitely understanding more, especially 2016 on to now. Because there's so many stories out there, but also others like us that feel comfortable to finally be able to share those stories and get them out there. When all of this started, there were people who were sending in messages saying, one specifically that I remember too, saying, I'm still shaking after typing this out. I've been holding it in for so long. Thank you for just giving me the opportunity to put it out there and for others to be able to read it. And it's hard to explain the release of sharing some of these stories, whether it be in Imagine Listening or those who sent them in simply for the movement to be put out there anonymously. It's therapeutic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. When I was actually writing notes of calls way back. I want to say it was 2000, 2001. Actually, it was after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother day. And I was actually writing notes of calls, good, bad, ugly, because my thought process was I was going to write a book.
Mm-hmm. And
I was talking with then one of the sergeants, and they were kind of like, you can't be writing notes down about calls, this, that, and other thing. And I had to shred it because I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think about that. But apparently some of my notes that I had taken were a little too detailed. And they felt that, I was going to take it outside. And I was like, no, I wasn't. And they're like, no, you got to get rid of it. So I shredded it. But I guess at that time, it was a way of release,
mm-hmm.
Writing down. Because I would write down how that call made me feel too. And it was troubling to have to get rid of those, but I was like, okay, well, I don't want to get in trouble. I love my job. I don't want to get fired from it.
Right. Yeah.
But I lost that release, of being able to do that. And then, after, 9/11, it made matters even worse, because the call tapes, I don't know if it was just because of that date, because of what happened with me that day, but the call types seemed to get stranger. Very strange. And it also could have been me, I'm a bit of an overthinker. be critiquing myself on a lot of extra stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. But it seemed really weird. So be able to lose that opportunity. So then when I learned about your podcast, and I think it was April 2018, coworker of mine, we were at a conference and she told me about it and I started listening to it. And at that point, I think you were on like episode 240. And I was like, wow, I got to start this from the beginning. And when I saw you in APCO in 2019, I was caught up. I had listened to every single episode.
Wow.
And to this day, I think I'm still caught up, with the exception of the one I think you just released this week. Just because it was, like I said, it's therapeutic. I learned it's okay not to be okay. I learned, hey, you got to stop burying shit. You've got to release it, whether it's through the EAP program at work. And it was funny too, because I was always the guy making that referral, being the training officer, talking about stress management in our classes. We have this EAP program, handing out the card all the time. And in the back of my head, I'm handing out this card and I'm saying to myself, hey, idiot, you should take that card once in a while yourself.
Right.
And I never did, until May of 2020. That'll be a different episode. I'm not ready to go on that road just yet.
Well, I will be here when you're ready to talk about that.
All right.
But thank you for sharing that, man. Like, I appreciate it very, very much. I started all of this, for similar reasons. I didn't talk about my own stuff either. It wasn't until I started writing it down and feeling good about it, whether the call was good or bad, felt good about being able to get it out there and people reading and learning, understanding more. And then doing the podcast, having people come on and us just talk about the experiences. And, I've mentioned this many times, but one of the deputies that I worked with, a true hard ass, but amazing person. I love the dude. I remember him sending me a message and saying, I've learned more about what you guys do in these first 3 episodes than my whole 20-something years that I've done this. And he's like, I'll be more patient when you tell me to stand by on lean. So lean for us in Michigan was NCIC. So, they would tell us to go run someone and we were always busy. There was 3 minimum for the entire county. Wow. And sometimes when it got really crazy, we would have to say, go to lean and stand by. Go to lean and stand by one. And there would be a few times where they would key up and say, still standing by. And I'd key up and say, 10-4, please continue to stand by. We're going through something here. And then they would hear the tone out. And then they'd realize, oh, okay. They would clear their stop and then they would haul ass to whatever we just toned out. Yeah. But they learned so much from it. And, a lot of people were able to share more as well. So I'm just glad that we're here and we're able to talk about this as well. And especially, for Imagine Listening when you were there in Baltimore to be able to share your story and all. And you've just been such a huge support and everything for everything that is within the trenches. So I appreciate it more than you know. There's one thing that I hear or I've heard throughout this conversation, and it's the critiquing of our own work. And my last 2 weeks in dispatch, I think I did the most overthinking and over critiquing of my own work ever. Yeah. Because just like I mentioned, when you think you've taken the most craziest call, the dispatch gods come out. Well, those last 2 weeks, it was like they were saying goodbye to me. Like, we're going to let you go, but you're going to go out with a bang. And almost every call was a crazy, something gnarly that was coming in. I thought, what is it? And one of those calls specifically where I was my own worst critic in the worst way. Like there was enough time in between this one call and the other calls that were coming in, where I spent like 20, 30 minutes mapping out the distance from where this person had left this house to where they crashed their car into the tree. And they committed suicide. But I was trying to think, you know, if I would have changed my questioning, would have it had changed the outcome? If I would have done this or this, if I would have called him sooner, would this or this happen? And finally, it just came to the point where there was nothing else I could do. By the time I went to call that person, they were already going into the tree, and there was nothing I could do. But that is something that I think we all struggle with, is being our own worst critic, because we want to do such a good job. And when one little thing, even if it's good, like you were saying earlier, you know, that first call, you know, someone listened to it and they said, no, you did good. You was textbook. But to you, right? To you, you were like, guys, I think I screwed this up, or I didn't do this. Why do you think we do that? Like I gave my part there. Like what from you? Like why do you think all of us do this?
Well, we know the public has that expectation of perfection. And we know, especially after we've been in the position for a certain period of time, we know the real consequences of making a mistake. A lot of times when we have new hires come in, we'll have people of a certain age range that will do much better than people of another age range because they have life experience. They know the consequences of screwing up. So they will literally overthink the call before they even had a chance to learn about it. So they'll never make it off training. They won't make it through the program. To where the younger ones, they will just roll with it because they're not going to overthink the outcome. And, you know, that was basically why I became a workaholic. Not only would I constantly critique myself, I would critique everybody else. And it got to the point where it was pointed out to me that I was over critiquing too much. And while I was still doing it on a professional level, I needed to stop being so nitpicky on certain things. But again, that was a result of what had happened to me so many years ago, that I wanted to make sure that everybody was as prepared as possible for every call, which in theory is impossible, right? But in my mind, no, I got to be there. You know, I want to be able to provide them with as much information as possible. So this way, if they deal with a first time call, they're going to be prepared for it. You know, and I think part of that is because I'm a true believer in things happen for a reason. A quick analogy of that is you're rushing somewheres and now all of a sudden there's a traffic jam and now you're delayed in traffic. Come to find out that there's an accident up the road. Well, whether you believe in God or not, that was God's way of saying, hey, I'm not ready for you yet. I'm going to put this traffic jam in front of you to prevent you from being at that intersection at that time. I'm going to prevent this, I'm going to throw this to see if you're ready for that. One of the biggest things for me that caused me to overthink things is I learned, and it wasn't actually until about 8 years ago that I finally put all of it together, but some of the calls that I had taken in the very beginning of a frequent caller was actually a way of me getting ready for my own mother's dementia. I ended up taking care of my mom for 11 years, battling Alzheimer's dementia. And if it wasn't for me dealing with those calls back in, 2000, 2001 through, mom was diagnosed in 2010, those 10 years of dealing with those frequent callers that had, whether it be schizophrenia or dementia or whatever else, there was just one caller that really resembled my mom's behaviors that I think I was put there for a reason, to learn how to deal with that person so I can be prepared for my mom when those days came. And it helped. And it helped me with my mom, but it put a bigger emphasis on my job because now it was, hey, I need to make sure that all my other employees are prepared, for something else, prepared for these next calls that are going to come in. And it would cause me to take things very personal. If they would make the slightest error on something, I would take it personal because I didn't teach them that. They shouldn't have made that mistake if I would have, they wouldn't have made that mistake if I would have taught them better. And I beat the living shit out of myself a lot for doing that. And it wasn't until, last May that I reached out and got help and realized that. But like I said, that'll be a whole nother episode or actually class in itself. But we, back to your original question, why we overthink on everything, because we know the public's expecting perfection and we want to give them that. And if we can't, we're going to continue to beat ourselves up until we do.
It's very true, man. You must, I think you're like my spirit animal, actually, because I say this because it's listening to you say that, what you were saying in the beginning, I got goosebumps because I've told people, I was talking actually with Adam Tim at a conference, and he was telling me that he was headed somewhere and got something side. There was some traffic or something that was going on, and I was telling him. I said, whenever something like that happens to me, I always end up thinking there's got to be a reason that this happened, because I too am a firm believer that things happen for a reason, or that we are put in certain places because of something that's happening or will happen, or, in the future, or anything like that. So, I was telling him, I said, you never know, man, there could have been an accident that was going on, or you could have been involved in an accident. I always look at it that way, that, I'm in a hurry somewhere, or to go somewhere. And then something like this happens, I will find myself sometimes getting annoyed, but then I'll think, no, there's a reason for this. For all I know, I could have been in an accident. It would have put me in a spot where I would not have wanted to be. So I'm the same as you right there. When a lot of times I've talked to people and they have said, I had something happen in my past where when I took this phone call, I was actually better prepared for that call because I've dealt with the same thing before. Where if anybody else would have taken that call, they might not have been prepared to take it because they didn't have the same experience, that I did at that time. And, the call might have gone south. It might have gone, a different way. So, I'm glad it was me who took that call. And here in your story, in your experience, you were taking calls from someone who you ended up eventually with your own mom dealt with something like that, but it prepared you. And man, I'm right there with you. There's reasons that things happen, and we're able to use those experiences for good.
Absolutely, and they may be very, very slight. You never know when they're going to happen. Mm-hmm. Don't look for them; they will never be there if you look for them. It just happens. Adam, you mentioned Adam Tim, another great individual. Him, oh my God, I can't believe I forget her name right now. Tanya Lee. Him and Tanya Lee did a little 6-episode thing for the Healthy Dispatcher before Adam Tim went on to Rapid Deploy. I stumbled across a podcast that they were doing, or not podcast, just a little show that they were doing about how to mentally prepare yourself for the day, about how to clean up your environment, things of that nature. And stumbling across that allowed me to say, hey, wow, you know what? Even though I've already started my therapy, there are some other things that I could really be doing to help declutter my mind. Declutter my area will help me declutter my mind. And doing that allowed me to put some of my energy, my negative energy, towards something else, because it reminded me that, hey, all right, I'm going to declutter this. I was decluttering my basement and I came across all my bowling balls that I had in my basement. And right next to my bowling ball was my original basic telecommunicator training manual from 1997. And a light bulb went off. And I went, hey, I got a crazy idea. What if I combine my two passions into one? I went upstairs and I started talking to my wife about it. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? And I was like, it's really cool. I said, it's in my mind, but it's really cool. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, I'll take my bowling ball and put a headset on it.
Yes.
And I'll call him 911 bowler. And she just starts laughing. She's like, are you okay? Do I need to call the doctor? Are you okay? Like, no, you don't get it. And I was actually talking in a very high pitched voice because I was excited about it.
Yeah,
like, hey,
yeah.
this is really cool. And so she was like, oh, okay. And what are you gonna do with this bowling ball with a headset on it? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm gonna do something with it. And so for those of you that don't know, 911 Bowler now has an official athlete page on Facebook. He has gone sleigh riding in the snow. We've taken him hiking. I'm going to take him hiking again next week. I'm not really sure how I'm going to get him on the plane yet, but I've actually researched it a little bit. They are allowed on a plane, but the carry-on size is very specific. And it turns out to be the exact same size width-wise as a bowling ball. So I'm going to have to get creative with that, I think. But either way, I've found a way to take some of my energy of being angry with myself from all the stress of the calls and the anxiety and dealing with mom's dementia at the time and stuff like that. And I focused it on taking care of myself, going hiking, biking. I was running for a while because we had that Now on Wonder Woman thing, which I did beat your time, by the way.
Yeah, you did, man. Well done.
But my knees aren't as young as they used to be, so I can't run as well. So I've gone back to bicycling to work. It's not too bad. It's only 6.5 miles each way. But every once in a while, I'll pack the bowling ball with me just for the extra, workout. And people just look like, what the hell's the matter with you? Like, I need to release some stress or anxiety. So leave me alone for a minute, will you?
That is amazing, man.
But yeah, so it's just you don't know where those moments are going to come from, what they're going to lead to. But when they're there, take advantage of it. Take it for a ride and see where it's going to take you. As long as it's legal.
Oh, of course. Oh, man. It has been amazing to have you on here and to learn more about you and everything that you're doing. I cannot wait to have you back and also to see you in person. As we go into the wrap up of this epic episode.
Those dreaded words, the wrap up.
I know. Yeah. As we go into the wrap up of this episode, we're talking about, things that happen for a reason, us over critiquing ourselves. If you could give any advice, to those, because we all do it when we overthink, I guess just on how to really stay balanced, when we're overthinking ourselves or our performance or what it is that we've done, things that have helped you, what's some advice that you can give those out there who are just, thinking about some of the calls that they taken and have I done this right? Did I do this right? All of those things that are in our head. I guess really, how do you declutter that?
The first thing I found that you have to do is you have to stop expecting approval from everybody. Because I was taking that on a personal level, I turned that into a work expectation as well, that everything had to be, I had to approve of everything. Once I started realizing, because I was not one that had a lot of friends when I was growing up in high school. I had one really good best friend. Hey, Bubba, if you ever watch this. And then I had a bunch of, I had a few other friends that I kind of worked with, but I never really had a group of really good friends. And as I went through life, I got married. all those friends went away and it was all family oriented, that now that the family orientation isn't there as much, I look for friends too much, or I, get over anxious when somebody does become my friend, and, I almost, smother them too much, if you will. Think about that on the work level, that, okay, when it comes time to handle a call, think of your basics. Think about how you handled that call. Did you do the basics first? All right. If you got your basics down, everything else is just, gravy. All right. All the extra information that you can get is gravy. The more you can get, the better. Just like gravy. The more you can get, the better, right? If you can take that and not critique yourself so much and say, okay, I got the basics. I did what I had to do. To this day, when I go in and work, I'll go in and work the floor. I know I've got a lot of extra eyes on me because I'm the training officer. Mm-hmm. So I know everybody's watching me. So I will find myself being a little extra nervous about how to handle a call because, hey, I got everybody's watching me. I got to make sure everything's perfect, right? No, it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be right. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm human just like they are. And every once in a while, I'd say, you know what? I forgot to get the phone number of the business for the alarm that came in, because I got busy thinking about something else with that alarm call. And, hey, do as I say, don't do as I do, but hey, I'm human too. And we all make mistakes from time to time, and just being able to sometimes laugh it off, realize that, okay, stop expecting approval from everybody else. All right. If they're your friends, they're your friends. If they're really your friends, you don't have to look for their approval. If you're doing your job appropriately, as long as you do your basics, you don't have to approve it yourself because you did the basics. Everything else is gravy. All right. And if you can just keep that mindset that, your initial instinct is to go back and re-listen to the call. Do you really need to? Do you have all the information? Are you confident with the location and everything else? If you are, why are you going to go back and listen to that call again? Mm-hmm. Have somebody else listen to the call. If you want to critique yourself, have somebody else listen to the call, because you are going to go into it with the mindset that you did bad, and you're going to come out thinking bad. If somebody else goes into it without a mindset of it being bad, they're going to give you a true, look back on it and say, no, you did a really good job. And I kind of got mixed up my words there, so I'm not sure if that quite made 100% sense, but.
No, that was good. That was excellent, man.
I'm not really sure why I brought gravy into it, but it was just, maybe it's good to be
I like gravy.
Yeah, right? Who doesn't like gravy, right?
No, that made perfect sense, man. Thank you so very much for being on, for coming on, sharing your story, and I look forward to having you on another episode or even a dispatchers roundtable to go over some topics and everything with a live audience. That would be awesome to have you on and do.
Yeah, actually, dispatchers roundtable, I am going to as soon as I'm done with the class I'm preparing now, and just to go, sometimes it's okay to critique yourself a little too much. Just in this one instance, I'll throw this out there. I asked somebody to really critique an in-service presentation I did because I put a lot of effort into it. Mm-hmm. It was our 8-hour full day December 1, and this person had just come back to us from another agency, and I said, hey, do me a favor. Now that you've seen the other side, give me your true, honest opinion about how this was. And their initial response was, well, I could have been home doing the dishes. So after I got up off the ground from the punch to the gut, I was like, wow. But I took that and I turned it into something else. And it's called a training program that I'm actually going to present at New Jersey NENA in November.
Nice.
It's called Is Your Training Better Than Doing the Dishes? And the acronym is Doing Dishes. And each letter of Doing Dishes is specific to dispatcher, it being different, that sort of thing, organized, and it goes through that whole alphabet of how you can do this and using the SMART analogy. And I took that and I turned it into a class. Because
Dude, that's awesome.
I don't want anybody else to get that punch in the gut.
That is awesome.
So
I'm excited. I can't wait to hear more about it and everything, man. Well done.
thank you. I'm looking
Again,
forward to doing it.
Thank you for being on. I appreciate everything that you do. And as also, just one more time, how do people find everything that you're doing with 911 Bowler?
On Facebook, 911 Bowler. He also has an Instagram account, 911_Bowler. You can watch the crazy shenanigans of him going hiking, going snowboarding, and it's a lot of fun. Or even going mountain biking.
Hell yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
I love it, man. That is awesome. Well, again, thank you for being on, and I will be right back here with you. So for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, that is @91podcast, and you can like us on Facebook, that is facebook.com/Within the Trenches Podcast. If you're looking for any bonus content, you can find us. You can become a patron and support us at patreon.com/WTT Podcast. All of the Dispatchers Roundtable episodes, as well as the open mic episodes, they're going to have an audio version, and some of those have already been put out. I've got around, I think 6 and 7 for the Dispatchers Roundtable that are going to be going out this week, and that is exclusively for patrons that are going to go on there. Also, the live broadcasts that have been done at Navigator and the other conferences that are coming up, they're going to be going into audio for patrons as well. So there's swag, t-shirts, discounts to the store, all other types of things, as well as more Singing Badly in My Car coming up for patrons. Again, thank you, patrons, so very much for everything. That is patreon.com/WTT Podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and thank you so very much for everything. And this can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter, and you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.